Hi, folks. I'm Forris Day Jr. Today on Rolling Tape, we're talking with Joe Gilford, author of the book, Why Does the Screenwriter Cross the Road? And Other Screenwriting Secrets. Now, let's roll tape.
This episode brought to you by Spoof Dance Film Festival. Make parody commercials and bring the funny.
Welcome to the show, Joe.
Hey, Forrest, how you doing? Thanks for having me. I'm really glad to be here.
I'm glad you were able to join us today down in New York City.
Brooklyn, to be exact.
Oh,
I can state of mind.
I can hear the New York accent. Yeah, there's no doubt. Someone meets Joe Gilford, they're going, that guy is from New York.
I am part man, part pavement.
Yeah. All right, Joe. So we got 10 minutes. Let's talk about your book.
My book, Why Does the Screenwriter Cross the Road? And Other Screenwriting Secrets, is really a really good, I think it's a guide. It's, Forrest, if you read it, which I know you have, it's not very academic. And even though I've been a screenwriting professor at NYU for 17 years, I always felt that a lot of the things that I learned in screenwriting were really self-taught. Even though I went to film school and I studied writing, I went to the Robert McKee seminars, I always found that some of the terminology and some of the direction I was given were too much for me to actually intellectually process. So what I hope I've done in the book is not just simplify things, but allow you to understand the really initial steps. I think people who write screenplays, even professionals, writing a new screenplay is just like changing something in your life. It's like stopping smoking. It's like whether you're going to cut down on candy and stuff like that. Writing a new script represents a change in anyone's life, even if you've been doing it over and over again. So I always like to go back to what the first steps are. And I know a lot of screenwriters, especially new ones, get discouraged. They ask me what the first step is. And a lot of teachers say, well, you have to have character. You have to have motivation, a really overused term. You have to have a reason for the story to be told. All that actually does happen. But what I really like to tell people is go with whatever your first impulse is. This is the least intimidating and the most welcoming way you can start a new project, by opening yourself to yourself. So many of my students sometimes come into class with an idea that's based on a location or a work of architecture or something they overheard when they were picking up their egg sandwich at the coffee shop, or a conversation they just had with their parents or a good friend, or a recent life experience. And I always tell them to look at that as a first impulse for starting a new story idea. The next step is to work it out so you really feel like you have a beginning, middle, and an end. Now, people say, well, what does that mean? Well, it means once upon a time, there was this guy, and this guy had this problem. And this problem, he thought, could be solved if he could only blank. And that is really the crux of the story. And I call this the path to satisfaction. The path to satisfaction makes movies really what they are because it causes its own conflict. Now, so many students and people come up to me and go, how do I get conflict out of my story? Well, it's not easy, but you need to look at what in life is conflicting your character. And the path to satisfaction, in my opinion, is a good way to begin the foundation for that. The path to satisfaction is a fairly unreasonable and stupid idea that the character has. Now, this can lead to comedy because we know in Seinfeld and the Honeymooners, there was always a scheme. There was always some quick money, or there was always an easy solution to a difficult problem. And the same thing in drama. In other words, in Chinatown, Jack Nicholson is convinced he can bring down the most powerful man in Los Angeles, Noah Cross, the person played by John Huston. But of course, he's wrong, and he doesn't get to that point of realization until the very end. And what's very poignant about Chinatown, and so tragic, is that he's repeating the sins of the past. And we've learned about this all the way through the movie. By the time we get to the end, we realize, oh my God, you did it again, Jake. This is the same thing that happens in Greek drama, and most of the best film dramas are really closely adhere to the rules of Greek drama. And I think Oedipus is a great place to start and finish, because in Oedipus, regardless of what everybody tells him, he has still got to go do this thing. He's got to try to change his destiny. What a stupid idea, but what great drama that is for a character. So with your impulse and an idea of what the beginning, middle, and end could be, you can then begin to decide what kind of character you have. And once you have a character, once you know who the story is going to be about, you can then move forward into the building blocks of a story. And that's very much what my book talks about, is how to build a story. I'm very firm about the idea that screenplays are not written. Screenplays are not literature. They're not written. Screenplays are built. They're built scene by scene, action by action, different characters feeding into the story, creating conflict, creating a climax, and all that. So again, what I try to do is scale this down to the step-by-step ways you can come up with a good story idea. The second thing I try to do is I try to make everyone who comes in contact with me a student of screenwriting as it appears in their world. Now, of course, this starts with movies and television, what we're exposed to all the time, but it's also in graphic novels. It's also in all literature. It's also in a lot of journalism. Journalism has beginning, middles, and ends as well. So I like for people to recognize patterns. Look at those patterns. Look at those patterns tell a story. And then you can begin to imitate that pattern. And once you imitate the pattern, you are then putting yourself in the same position as any master screenwriter. There's also a sense of surrender involved in what you're doing, too. You want to give in to these accepted guidelines. While it's not a formula, you do want to respect and show some humility in terms of the fact that the movies that you love, the great movies that you love, all use these patterns. And once you understand the pattern and the proportions of your story, very important, you will then begin to build your own story. Very much like a carpenter who admires the work of another carpenter, goes, sees his cabinetry, sees how he makes his joints, and begins to emulate that. So that's the really basic approach I use in my book.
What gave you the idea to write the book? Were you watching movies, noticing all these patterns, noticing the way characters were developed, and then decided to write it, or what was your process?
Well, it was a combination of things, but actually it was sort of my life experience. I've been teaching at NYU and a few other places for about 17 years. I have prepared dozens of lectures, many of which simply, once they were written and developed, I knew that they worked, became chapters in the book, and I began to organize it. My publishers assisted me in creating a sort of a concept and a table of contents that would appeal to what they believe their readers or a potential reader would go for. And I just began to compile this information. Once I thought I could write a book, I went to various publishers until I found someone who would publish it. And Michael Weezy, as you know, publishes two of the biggest books, The Writer's Journey by Chris Vogler and Save the Cat by Blake Snyder, which are two of the most popular screenwriting books. They also have a couple of other titles, which I think are the best titles in screenwriting. One of them is My Story Can Beat Up Your Story. And I've always enjoyed that title. They're very good at that at Michael Weezy. In any case, I just thought I had enough material to write a book, and it took me about 6 months to actually write it all. And I had time to do that, and I put it all together. I'm very proud of it. And people are responding very well to it.
And before we go, we should tell people how to get the book. And
the book is available where you find books. It can be found in large bookstores like Barnes & Noble or Dalton's, but you can get it very easily at Michael Weezy Books or mwb.com. And it's also available, of course, at Amazon.
And how can people get a hold of you if they'd like to?
I am, I think, a very good and caring script consultant and story coach. And they can find me at storyrescue.com. That's one word, www.storyrescue.com. And I'm always happy to help people.
And one more thing before we go. Can you show us, the audience, that picture of your dad?
Oh, sure. You'll have to get up here.
Yeah, get up.
I'm not wearing any pants. I warned you.
No.
I told you what I was wearing for, so watch out.
You did. All right, and tell us, of course, the story behind it.
Father, Jack Gilford, and he is on the set at NBC in 1960, or was it a little later, maybe 61? This was the first telecast, and he was the host of a pilot.
Hold it back because it's getting a reflection.
Sorry. How's that?
Good.
Yeah, he was the host of the first Muppets telecast, which was not yet called the Muppets. And he was the host of that show. That was Jim Henson's first Muppet broadcast.
That is so cool. And
showbiz history, Ferris. That's where I dwell.
All right, that's awesome, Joe. Thank you for sharing that picture.
Great to be here with you.
I want to thank Joe Gilford for joining me today on Rolling Tape with his book, Why Does the Screenwriter Cross the Road? I'm Forris Day for Rolling Tape. Please subscribe to our page and you'll get alerts when new videos are uploaded. You can like and comment below because we love all of that stuff. So thank you for joining me today on Rolling Tape.